Most people are trying to lead with an empty tank, emotionally overdrawn, mentally drained, and spiritually exhausted. And when you're constantly running on empty, the cost isn't just a personal one, it impacts your performance and your sense of purpose. So let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk and explore how to build a high emotional bank account, one powered by self awareness, self esteem, and self confidence.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Dr. Damion V. Bolton, is a motivational teacher, transformational speaker, and author of This One's For You, Life, Leadership, and a High Emotional Bank Account. A U.S. Army veteran and PhD in organizational leadership, his message centers around restoring emotional strength and redefining personal identity. He inspires audiences to think big, live intentionally, and lead with authenticity from the inside out. Happy to have you with us and welcome to the show, Damion.
Glad to be here. Such a pleasure. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, you bet. I want to dive right in. I love the topic of your book. You hit the right show. We're talking about pep talks here.
Right, absolutely.
I noticed it just launched a few weeks ago, so you're kind of new at all this. How did the book find you? How did you get at this book?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. I chose the title because I wanted every reader to understand that, this message is not abstract, nor is it academic. It's a personal message. I wrote it for the person who's trying to lead while limping, for those who feel unseen, unheard, and unfinished. It's my way of saying, hey, you're not forgotten, you're not alone. So when they pick up this book, they hear me speak, they'll know this one here is for them. And the way that it got to me, because I was once that person.
Right.
So everything that I put in the book, it came out of me from a lived experience, and so I feel as though I had to write it. For example, last year I was having some challenges, and I'm giving myself my own little motivational speeches, and because I generally read about a book a week, and one day it just hit me. I was like, you know what? I'm actually reading to numb myself. I'm reading to numb myself. So let me go somewhere and sit down and just get my thoughts out and empty my tank. And when I emptied my tank, I came up with This One's For You, Life, Leadership, and a High Emotional Bank Account.
Yeah, actually, you hit on something. I really think it's almost therapy sometimes when we
Absolutely.
get into writing. I've actually experimented a little bit in some of the prison systems and
Mhm.
getting some of the inmates to write about just tell your story.
Right.
Because I'm sure that you notice that when you start telling your story, it's sort of surprising how much more of the story comes out, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that's the exploratory part, right? I think the coolest part is you can outline a book, you can get it all set, but the cool parts are when you step back and go, I didn't even see that part coming, you know?
Correct. You know what's interesting? A couple of years ago, this lady, she reached out to me and she said, I really think you should write a book. And when she told me that, I got so nervous because she was so successful. And then she had sent me over like a copy of her book, her framework for her book. And she had all these, successful people in there. And I mean, I shriveled up like a snail with salt on it, And so I just told her, I said, I'm not ready because I'm very big on not wasting people's time. I said, I'm not ready. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago. But last year, I sat down at Starbucks and I just began to empty my tank, and I put the entire book together literally in 3 weeks.
Yeah. That's the way it usually happens. It'll come get you. You notice, and I word that question very carefully. I never ask a person how they found a book.
Right.
I ask them how the book found you.
Absolutely. Right.
And I noticed you cued right in. You went, good question, because nobody just goes, oh, I was sitting around, didn't have anything to do, and thought I'd start typing. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So,
Right.
welcome to the club. But that's the most. I've never met an author who didn't have a story and it didn't light up with that first question. Let's
Right.
talk about when you mentioned that you used the term high emotional bank account, an emotional bank account. What exactly is that? Walk us through that part.
So a high emotional bank account, it's the account that we carry inside of us. And for me, I would define it's comprised of three compartments: your self-esteem, which is how you feel about yourself; your self-image, how you see yourself; and your self-confidence, which is how you feel about your skills, leadership, and abilities. And the way that we access that account is through self-awareness. So, for example, if you go to the bank, you may have your checking account, your savings account, your investment account, but you have to have a debit card to access that account. And that debit card has a personal PIN number that you created. And so, self awareness is us examining ourselves, taking a self assessment. And so, your self esteem, how you feel about yourself. Why am I feeling like this in this moment? My self image is how I see myself because no matter where you go, there you are. And my
Yeah.
self confidence is my skills, leadership, and abilities. Can I get it again if I lost it? If they reject me from the job, do I have enough skills and abilities to go out there and get another one? So that's the sum total of the high emotional bank account.
Got it. And in the book, do you have any way of somebody assessing themselves, or can they come to your website and assess that, or is that just sort of more emotional?
So it's more emotional. Now, I would say this personally. So I always ask myself what I call my recalibration questions. Where have I been? Why am I here? Where am I going? How will I get there? Who's coming with me? And the bonus question is, what will it cost? So I always ask myself those questions to make sure that I'm in alignment because there are times where I may encounter an obstacle and I feel like, for example, about 5 years ago, I had put together an investment group and my goal was to go out into the world of acquisitions and raise capital to buy a hospital. And so I landed a meeting with a private equity firm, and I walked in there real confident. And so when all these high profile businessmen and women started to filter into the room, and then they turned on all the monitors around the room. And so it was people from everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh. And uh, 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 imposter syndrome wrapped his lovely arms around me. And the gentleman said, now, mind you, my former mentor, he said, hey, I've worked with these guys before. And if you mention anything under $10 million, they're not going to work with you. So the gentleman said, well, how much money are you looking to raise? And I said, oh, a half a million to $2 million. And he said, oh, we thought you wanted to do real business. The meeting is over. It was over just like that, you know. And I couldn't even say the word 10 million because I didn't believe. And I don't believe arises from a different level of I don't know. So I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my value, which my self-confidence was not there. My self-esteem was not there. And I had a poor self-image.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny you mentioned that. I tell people because I've been, delivering seminars for on my own for about 33 years.
Mhm.
And when you look at what a professional speaker like yourself, what we charge for a keynote or what we might charge for a workshop, on one hand, daggone it, you and I, well, we're worth it, by golly. And on the other hand, every now and then when no one's looking, I go, oh my, that's a big number there. I actually put them up on the wall and tell people, you got to look over there, you got to practice saying them so you don't sound nervous about your number. It takes practice. I don't think that's instinctive.
You know what? I want to interject something right there. So this was in 2017. One of my friends, her name is I call her Trina Kiyosaki because she's in the Robert Kiyosaki camp, and it was his birthday, and so she invited me as her plus one to his birthday party. And so I get there, I'm super excited. I've read this man's books, I've seen his seminars, and so when he comes out, he comes right up to me. He said, "I know everybody here but you." And so we get to talking, and he said, "So you want to be a speaker?" He said, "Go talk to Veronica." Veronica was the back of the room. She was from out of Singapore, I believe. And she told me, she said, "My firm is large." She said, "I book presidents." She said, "I book, Tony Robbins, all these guys." And she said, I'm working with the number one speaker in the world, and I won't say his name. And she said, we offered him 5 events, and she said we offered him $100,000, but he's asking for 200. She said, "Can you handle 30,000 people?" And I said, "Absolutely." She said, "Well, if he's asking for 200, what is your price?" And when she said that, I began to stutter. I began to stutter
Right.
because
Right.
because I had never billed for anything to speak over 10 grand. You
Right.
know, I thought I had arrived with that. And so I began to stutter, and she took out her business card and she said, "When you figure out your worth, let me know." And in that moment, I knew my gift, but I didn't know my value, you
Right.
know. And I emailed her 2 weeks later and she never responded. So
Right.
I missed a great opportunity. So I never forget that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make you feel a little bit better about that because I think that was an unfair question to you because believe it or not, some years ago, and it was actually shortly, I mean, a couple of days before 9/11. Okay.
Right.
But I was out in LA, and what happened was I got a call from a speakers bureau. They said, they lost their speaker. We need you to fill in. And I was filling in for Bill Clinton. Okay. And Bill
Wow.
Clinton was, even back then, he was getting six figures, right?
Absolutely.
But this was a really good speakers bureau. I'm not a six-figure speaker, okay? I'm a five-figure speaker, okay? Just because Bill Clinton couldn't make it, I did take that presentation, and I think I kicked that presentation's butt. I mean, I did good, I did well, but I didn't charge him six figures for that because that's not what the client was supposed to pay.
Right.
So, in fairness to you, I think she sort of took advantage of the new guy a little bit with those numbers. I would have come in exactly what my number is because that's who you are. You don't just because you're filling in
Right.
doesn't mean I get paid 100,000 more when I'm filling in for another guy.
Right.
No, you're still Damion Bolton, right? So anyway, it's I think you were in the right. You might not have just been ready for that one. Believe me,
I was
yeah, it wasn't been an easy gig for you. I will tell you that was a tough gig because that crowd they didn't all know that Clinton wasn't going to be there.
right.
It was sort of like going to see a play on Broadway. They go, standing in for the guy that you came to see and paid that ticket price is somebody you've never heard of.
Right.
But you know what's
Absolutely.
beautiful about our profession? We get an hour usually,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I didn't do in my head and it was say, well, I'll win them over in the first 30 seconds.
Right.
No, go ahead and think what you're going to think. And
Right.
rather than rush this, I'm just going to methodically win you over. And we'll see what it looks like at 59 minutes and 59 seconds.
Right.
But I think where speakers go wrong is if you had actually gotten that gig, I would have been in your ear going, get ready for some shock faces but let's see what they look like at the end. Okay,
Right.
that's our
Absolutely.
report card.
Absolutely. And I learned not to ever compare yourself to another person.
Right.
You can admire them, but don't compare yourself to them. And if they're thriving in their journey, clap for them. Just embrace your journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm not much of a golfer, but I wrote a piece one time and I was just sort of marveling at the way professional golfers play. They don't even look at the scoreboard for 3.5 days. They
Right.
don't care. They'll look with two or three holes to go. I played basketball. I coached basketball. Believe
Right.
me, I got an eye on the scoreboard. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm making moves from the first quarter on. But what you learn is they're just playing their ball, right?
That's it.
Looking at somebody else's ball is distracting you from what you're going to do. If the guy hits a 30-foot putt, go up and shake his hand. Uh,
Right.
but play your ball. And that's what you're learning as a speaker, which is, hey, I'll shake anybody's hand who wants to get up here and do phenomenally well. And I'm not rooting against you. I'm
Absolutely.
just playing my ball. And that's how we can control what we can control. I can't control the other guy's swing. I can only
Absolutely.
control my swing.
Correct.
All right, let's talk about self-image a little bit. I found it. You were right. You're right about this. You believe self-image is more important than external validation, and I think that's kind of where we're at right now. I think our initial gut reaction is, "What's everybody going to think of me?"
Right.
Right, rather than focusing on our self-image. So separate the two of those for me.
Self-image it's permanent. And like I said, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah,
It drives how we show up when no one is clapping for us. And external validation is temporary. It's fragile. It's depending on others. And people can be fickle. One day they're clapping for you. One day they wanna cut you off. So it's so important. Quite David Whitaker, he said, what we do for ourselves depends on what we think of ourselves, and what we think of ourselves depends on what we know of ourselves, and what we know of ourselves depends on what we've been told. So we have to ask ourselves, what story are we telling ourselves? Because the most important voice that you'll ever hear will be that of your own.
yeah,
So it's really important. And then again, the self-image, it's in conjunction with the other components of the high emotional bank account. So if I take a self-assessment of myself and I say, well, you know what? I'm not as good of a speaker as I think I am. Rob has given me some feedback, and I'm going to take this feedback, and I have examined myself and say, you know what, he's right. But I'm going to reach into my self confidence and say, although he's giving me this feedback, I have the confidence that I'm going to use this and I'm going to make myself better. And then my self esteem, my feelings aren't hurt when you give me this constructive feedback, because some people, they cannot take constructive feedback. They process it as destructive feedback. So self image is so important because it really helps us to revitalize ourselves and say, you know what, I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. Just
Yeah.
like take Kobe, for example. Kobe Bryant, if he have a bad night, he coming back and he's putting up 30, 40 shots the next game.
Right.
He understands that this game does not define his career. He still have the skill set. So he saw himself, as the Black Mamba.
Yeah. I miss him too. Uh,
Absolutely.
I really do. It's funny. I don't think we knew how much we loved him until he left us.
Right.
Because he was so unassuming. He wasn't,
Mhm.
this big, massive personality.
Right.
And I think in the end, that's what we appreciated. One of the many things we appreciated about Kobe
Right.
was he just quietly got it done.
Got it done.
Yeah. So the book came out in mid-August. Is that true?
The book came out on August the 15th, actually, yes.
Okay. And all right. Well, and the book is This One's for You, Life Leadership in a High Emotional Bank Account. Is it just a high emotional
High emotional bank account.
bank account? Sorry. Okay. We're going to we got to get some people put some reviews up on that book.
Absolutely.
So allow me, you just take a seat for a second. Let me do some heavy lifting. All right, Jollis people. Now, listen, I've gone over this before. I'm going to tell you again. It means a great deal to authors like this, not only for people to go ahead and take a look at this book and hearing this conversation today. I hope that gives you a good push, but throw a comment on there. Go ahead and throw a review on there. It means a lot to the Amazon algorithm, and it means a lot to the authors. And I guarantee you, think we got an author right here who's going to be very grateful if you do. So check this book out. This one's for you. Life Leadership and a High Emotional Bank Account. And we're not done with them either. Okay. We now return to our program. Get those reviews in, folks. All right. You write about emotional currency.
Mhm.
Tell me what that is and what role emotional currency plays in how we respond to failure or adversity.
Absolutely. So if I give you $1 million today, cash money, and then you go outside and your tire is flat on your car, I'm willing to bet that you will feel little to zero anxiety because you understand that you have $1 million in your cash app that I just sent you. So getting this tire fixed would be no problem. If I give you 15 million and your car is stolen and your house burnt down, notwithstanding that everyone is safe, you'll feel no anxiety because you know you have the emotion, you have the financial currency to cover that transaction. So what if we had $15 million within our emotional bank account? We had five in our self-image, five in our self-esteem, and 5 million in our self-confidence. So now, as a man, when I approach that woman over there and she rejects me, I walk away with my dignity intact. Also, I have $5 million in my self-image account. When I see a woman that I'm interested in, I'm gonna go approach her because I know that I'm a good person. I'm a man of value. I also say, okay, when this woman say, "Oh no, I'm not interested," I can reach into my $5 million account and my self-confidence and say, hey, you know what? There is somebody out there who will embrace me, who will like me. And it's the same theory with when I apply for that job. When I see the job description, I have a strong self-image. I have enough emotional currency in my self-image where I say, hey, I can do this job. It's within my wheelhouse. I have the skill set to do it. I also have enough skills, leadership, and ability that if they reject me, that I know this may not be the job for me and there's one better for me. So having a high emotional, our emotional currency, it helps us to deal with rejection, obstacles, and challenges. Because if you go to the bank or you go to a restaurant and you swipe your card and you get a negative, you get an overdraft, then your account is in the red. So not only is your account in the red, then you get an overdraft fee. So you couldn't pay the price, then they give you another charge for that. And often in our lives, that negative price or that overdraft fee, it shows up as depression, it shows up as anxiety, it shows up as low self-esteem, it shows up as poor self-image, And those things can manifest themselves in a myriad of ways.
Right. All right. So here's the big question for you then. You're not
Mhm.
getting an argument from me, but how do we build up that emotional currency? So I want that $1 million. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I will tell you, as a guy, just, an entrepreneur, some years are different than others. Oh,
Right.
I carry myself real well on
Mhm.
good years. Okay. Uh,
Absolutely.
but how do we build that currency?
Uh, Albert Einstein said energy is neither lost nor destroyed, but simply transferred from one party to the next. So it's important to be around like-minded people. It's important because you only meet two type of people in your life: those that are pushing you towards your dreams and those that are keeping you from them. So let's look at the people that are around us. Also, daily affirmations, keeping promises to yourself, celebrating small wins, not comparing yourself to others. Also, setting boundaries, removing toxic and negative withdrawals from our life. So it's one thing to be positive, but it's a whole different thing to remove negativity. Because if I'm being positive and I still have negative people around me, then that's a net zero, you know. So intentionally doing and saying positive things, but also intentionally removing negative people, negative thoughts, and negative self-talk.
Yeah. And can I just put a pin in one thing you said? Celebrating the small wins for me, I think is really important. And I just want people to hear what you just said. Because when we're beaten up a little bit, we
Mhm.
almost dismiss the small wins. Uh,
Absolutely.
and we're not going to probably not going to win the lottery. So that million's not going to come in one phone call.
Correct.
But so we got to crawl before we walk and walk before we run. And those small wins, I wish people would be kinder to themselves and
Absolutely.
embrace those wins. I just don't know if it's instinctive.
I don't think it is either because see, like we hear a lot of information about investing, and people have been saying, hey, you know what? If you just invest a little bit over time, that interest it'll build up. It'll constantly build up, and it's the same way with our emotions. If I like every morning, I get into the mirror and I say, oh, today's gonna be a good day. Today's gonna be a good day. Oh, you're a champion. Losing is not an option. What's coming is greater than what is. I'm telling myself that every day. And when I first started doing it, it felt kind of weird. But now, every time I get in front of a mirror, I give myself a motivational speech.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah. And you know what I also like about that motivational speech you're giving yourself? You're keeping that other voice. I call it the bully in the brain. You're
Absolutely.
keeping that bully down because without doing that, who's to say that there isn't another speech coming? Yeah,
Correct.
another day.
Correct.
Let's hope. Hey, genius, I hope it's better than yesterday. You weren't real great yesterday. It's that negative voice that really haunts people.
Yeah.
And I love what you're doing there, which is I'm a process guy. So you're building a process to say I don't accidentally get up and talk to myself. It's a process that I like. You're brushing your teeth, right? You get up and you do that. I just think that's a smart way to keep that bully away.
Absolutely. Remember earlier I told you I went to a meeting with a private equity firm, and I pretty much they ate my lunch. I mean, and I'm serious. The meeting didn't last 5 minutes. It didn't last 5 minutes. The gentleman, he closed his notebook and they walked out. And the gentleman next to him, he gave me a call. He said, "Hey, we don't do deals that small, but give these guys a call. They may work with you." And I'm telling you, I felt like, oh man. But as I was walking out, this older gentleman, he walked up to me. He said, "Hey, at least you tried. At least
Yeah.
you." And man, that little pulse, that little droplet of a positive, it resonated with me. And I've been nurturing that same seed for years now. So now I celebrate, even if I'm going after something, if I don't get it, I'm celebrating the fact that I'm in an offensive posture. I believed I could get it. Even
Right.
if I do not get it, the fact that I have positive belief and self-belief in myself, that is a win in itself.
Right. And Damien, let's not both of us forget that, moments like those remind us how we have to treat people too. So
Absolutely.
hats off to both those men who
Mhm.
who didn't slam the book shut and run out of the room quite so fast and
Right.
had some empathy and some compassion.
Mhm.
Because yeah, you were in a pond that might have been too big for you. I'm not sure I could have done much better, but
Yeah.
I always want to think that I'm going to be that guy that isn't
Right.
so full of myself
Mhm.
that I can slow down and extend a hand to somebody like that. It's not that either one of them were giving you any business, but
Right.
they were giving you hope.
Absolutely.
And hats off to both those guys. Damien, I work with people for maybe the last 15 years. I volunteer with people who are in career transition. So they're job hunting.
Mhm.
And you talk about a battered self-esteem.
Right.
Most people who look for jobs, they don't find them in a week or two.
Right.
So how can, what thoughts can you give to maybe help them rebuild their emotional bank accounts when you've gone through the trauma of a job loss, let's say?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I moved out here to Florida. I was working for a consulting firm. 7 days that I got here, I got laid off.
Wow.
And what was interesting was before I moved, although I was working remote, they had to approve my move. So they approved it and they laid me off 7 days after I signed my lease. William Shakespeare say expectation is the root of all heartbreak. So always set your expectations, and then I use three tools: patience, persistence, and flexibility. Patience, persistence, and flexibility. So when I'm going after something, I have the patience. I have all the patience in the world to stick with it until I get what I want. And I have the flexibility because sometimes the role may not show up in the way that we think it will, so having that flexibility as well as being persistent. Every successful person that I've met, they had the ability to endure, and it won't be pretty because, and I'm telling you my personal experience. That year, the money dried up. Every day I had a plan, or every week I had enough money to buy me a rotisserie chicken because I can't cook. Bought me a rotisserie chicken from Walmart. I would get me 2 gallons of water. I would get me some apples, oranges, get my little veggies, and then I would get the broccoli. I would get the broccoli that I could just microwave. And I would get my eggs. I have to have my eggs. And so that would be enough to sustain me for the week. Was that a good meal? It wasn't the best, but it got the job done. So my expectation was, hey, you know what? This is really where you are right now. And it's
Right.
okay. It's
Right.
temporary because what's coming is greater than what is. But let's be grateful for what I have right now because I'm not starving. I always say it could be better and it could be worse. And there's a term by the Stoics use. It's called amor fati, lover of one's fate. So I embrace the moment of where I am, but I know this is not where I'm going to end up, and it's always going to be better because what's coming is greater than what is. And so that's what helped me to get through. I think all too often now, because we don't have a high emotional bank account, we don't have the ability to stay in the dog fight because nothing is going to be handed to us. Everyone has good days, everyone has bad days. But if we have the patience, persistence, and flexibility coupled with a high emotional bank account, we can get it done, because again, with these companies, things are changing. AI's here, there's a lot going on in the corporate space. So we have to be ready for anything.
Yeah. And I would maintain that as tough as that time was for you, it's probably one of the most valuable times of your life because you really learned who you were,
Yeah,
you
I'm gonna
know?
tell you, every morning I would get up and I would start, I would say my affirmations. I would find things to be grateful for. Because I sold my car, I sold my bed, I got an air mattress. Like I just minimized my entire life, and I said, okay, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. And then I lost my mom to cancer in 2014. She was 50 years old.
Mm.
So that's became a cornerstone for me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, hold on, you know what? I don't have my job, but my doctor told me and tells me every year, you are the healthiest patient that I have. Now, year before last, he told me I was the second healthiest. I don't know who that number one guy or girl is, but I'm like, man, I have my health. So that right there, that puts me in the top 1% in the country. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's something I can be grateful for. And so that's another small win. When I deployed, one of my friends, he had his legs blown off, So I'm pulling all these things I can be grateful for, and I'm making me a nice emotional bank account of positivity, but I'm also acknowledging, okay, I have this obstacle, I have that obstacle, but I'm gonna get through it. So I just think it's important to really have a clear playing field of what's in front of you, but also what you have to be grateful for.
Well, I'm really glad you shared that too, because I think that's what makes a good speaker and a good book. Can you imagine if you really had never gone through any type of crisis like that, and yet you're up there on a stage telling people who are looking you in the eye and in some pain how to manage that pain? I
Right.
think you have to have managed it yourself to be
Absolutely.
able to write this book and to deliver this message. So I'm glad you shared that with me. And your military experience, how did that shape your understanding of leadership and emotional resilience? You're giving me a head start already talking about your buddy, but with a keep going there. Go a little bit more into the military experience.
Well, so the military, we define leadership as the process of influencing others to accomplish a mission by providing purpose, direction, and motivation. So as a leader, you have to always be ready to provide those three things. But also as a leader and as an individual, we have to provide those to ourselves. What is our purpose? What is our direction? And what's going to keep us motivated? The military taught me to lead under pressure, resilience when plans fall apart. And I saw first impression how teams survive. By depositing into each other. Again, like I said earlier, energy is neither lost nor destroyed, but simply transferred from one party to the next. And so the military was always provided that structure. Like no matter what happens, we must complete the mission. The mission must be completed. I remember when I got the call, my mom called me. She said, "Son, I got cancer. I got 3 months to live." And I went to my commander. And as important as that was, because we're packing up, getting ready to go to Iraq, he was like, "I'll send you back if anything happens." Now she had 3 months to live.
Right,
And I know that that was hard for him to tell me that, you
right.
know, but the mission is first. He said, we'll send you back if something happened." Now, and this is a testament to his leadership. Um, he made some calls and moved some things around because they cut some of the staffing that we needed. So I was able to stay back and go home and take care of my mom, and he put someone else in place. But leadership is everything. It's everything, but also being able to lead with integrity, to lead with honor. That's probably the number one thing that the military taught me. Honor and integrity is everything. I remember my former supervisor. I was able to go to school like part time, and so I was able to leave work at 3 o'clock, and I was in his office, and I was like, "Yeah, my professor told me that if I can get to the school at 2 o'clock, they can put me in an extra class, and I can graduate a little earlier." And I said, "Well, since we go to lunch at 12, I really shouldn't have to come back at 1. Just give me an extra little hour." And he said, "Okay, okay, that sounds good." And he came up and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "You thought you had me, didn't you? I'm not doing it." And I never forgot that. I never forgot that because I thought I was working him. He said, "You thought you had me." He said, "If I do it for you, I got to do it for everybody else, and it's not going to happen."
Right. I can hear it. My dad was a Marine, and was in the reserves for like 30 years. I remember his boot camps and his this and that. So I understand a little bit of there were no gray areas growing up. Let's just put it
Correct.
that way.
No gray areas.
There was right, wrong, and yes and no.
Right.
And you know what? I actually find that I like when I'm managed that way. I like when I work with people who want to work that way.
Right.
As much as I was growing up scratching my head, I thought, I always know where I stand.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's one of the most unnerving things about corporate America is when you're working with a manager and you don't know where you stand.
Oh
Um,
no.
but I think the military, you tend to know where you stand.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
So if I were to tell my soldiers, if I were to go out and say to them, "Hey, listen, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I need y'all to go over there and move that mountain by 5 o'clock." They would respond and say, "Well, Sergeant, can we do it by 12?" You know, it didn't matter that it was a mountain. All that mattered was the mission, and I have my colleagues, my comrades with me. And so that's one thing that I miss because like sometimes I'm talking to certain people and they may be like, "Oh, you trying to do that, man? That's gonna be difficult." Or
Right.
I don't think you can do that, or where we gonna get the resources? It's just a bunch of, which don't get me wrong, that's maybe they were right, but I just believe in grit and teamwork. We can do anything, we can do anything, and so I've set my mind there. So I love being around people who love to achieve, who have the will and the intestinal fortitude to power through and push through.
Yeah. Well, I can hear it in your voice, believe me. All right, last question for you. You've got you know, but you got some job seekers that are probably listening because I do work with a lot in that particular space. You got some salespeople who are listening who have good weeks, good months, good years, bad years. What do you say to people who just, I don't know, they're feeling unseen or they're feeling unheard?
Mhm.
I'm going to let you kind of wrap this up. Tell me, give me your best shot at how you deal with somebody who's listening right now. And I know one person in particular who I'm mentoring who's um, struggling right now and feels unheard. What would you say to that individual?
Well, I would say that I see you, I hear you, and you're not finished yet. Um, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do not go where the path may lead, but go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." The UFC fighter Conor McGregor said, "We've not come to take part, we've come to take over." The mystic sad guru, he said, "Organize your mind." Les Brown said, if you want a thing bad enough, you got to go out and fight for it. Work day and night for it. Give up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it. And when all that you dream and your scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, if you gladly sweat for it and fret for it and plan for it, and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, and if you simply go after this thing that you want with all of your capacity, your strength and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold poverty, famish, or gulp, sickness or pain and body or brain can take you away from the thing that you want. If dogged and grim, I besiege and beset it with the help of training, preparation, team think big. Listen to your parents, don't do drugs, make good grades, and God, you'll get it. So patience, persistence, flexibility, and self-esteem, and last but not least, a high emotional bank account.
Bingo. Beautiful. So well said. Tell me about how people get a hold of you.
You can find me on Instagram at I am Team Think Big. I am Team Think Big is my handle. On Facebook, Damion V Bolton, and on TikTok also I am Team Think Big. My website is www.teamthinkbig.com.
He's thinking big, folks, as you can tell. And let's not forget his book that you're going to go out there and not only buy, you're going to write a nice review on, which is This One's for You, Life Leadership and a High Emotional Bank Account. And this man walks the walk for sure. Look, I really enjoyed the conversation. And I've learned a few things. And you really hit me between the eyes on that last one, too. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. Grateful to have had you on and really nice meeting you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Oh, that's going to be tough. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.